It's also become a lot
Okay.
easier to capture sites in 3 dimensions. Just because you can capture something doesn't mean that you have the pipeline to be able to fully inspect those sites. And it oftentimes takes a person, an individual in the mix to be able to analyze it. And that analyzing can be oftentimes very manual and very cumbersome.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of tools that have been released over the past year or two. And I see this being the fastest growing market sector within drones, at least on the enterprise side.
Welcome back to another episode of the Pilots of the Caribbean podcast, where we talk about all things drones and how they're being used in the Caribbean. Now, my guest today is a solutions engineer with the DJI Enterprise team. With over a decade of experience in the UAV industry, he is on the front lines, helping commercial pilots integrate the latest high-end drone technology into their daily operations. Please join me in welcoming to the podcast Mr. Kyle Miller of DJI. Kyle, thank you very much for joining me on this episode of the Pilots of the Caribbean podcast. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I'm doing really well. How about you?
Not too bad. I could tell you just now, just battling some heat here. But, this is the region that we live in, so all of us are part of it.
Yeah, I would love to make it back down to the Caribbean area. Definitely love the heat, and we don't have that currently in Iowa. It's starting to cool down for the fall. So don't feel your pain when it comes to the heat, but would love to make it back down soon.
Yeah, the cool I could live with. When it gets cold, you guys could keep that.
Yeah, that's unfortunately the majority of the year. But
Yeah, I'll pass. You'll let me know how that goes. Kyle, for those who may not be familiar with you, how about you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience?
for sure. So my name is Kyle Miller, and I'm really glad to be on this podcast to be able to talk a little bit more about DJI. So I'm on the DJI team. I'm on the enterprise team. We're kind of broken up into a couple different industry verticals when it comes to enterprise. We've got energies, we've got public safety, and we also have surveying and mapping. And my background ended up being surveying and mapping. And it all started from precision agriculture. So I'm based out of the Midwest United States, work from home, do quite a bit of travel with DJI, but I got into the industry about 12 years ago when I was in college. I was able to scrap enough money together to buy some parts on Alibaba and kind of make my own drone. And it probably came from a little bit different aspect that most people get into drones. I would say most people, they want to take really nice photos, take really nice videos,
Mm-hmm.
even getting into the FPV side. But my first purpose of building a drone was to not fly it, which is very unconventional because
Right.
I wanted to build a drone that was affordable, that I could pay for on a college budget, that I could write missions to, that I could send
Okay.
waypoint locations to, and be able to start mapping my parents' fields. So my parents are still farmers of corn, of soybeans, and I wanted to be able to easily determine what parts of the field that we would want to scout and
Right.
fly throughout the growing season and just kind of manage vegetation. And was stuck in the drone industry and the ag industry for a little while. The first drone job that I really had was, you can kind of see it in the background there,
Yeah.
it was fixed wing drones. So back in 2015, quads would fly for like 15 minutes maximum.
Yep.
And that wasn't going to be able to map, your hundreds of acres or even hundreds of hectares of these fields that we have. And so we were doing everything with fixed wing drones, basically RC airplanes that had an autopilot in it that you could write missions to. And
Okay.
then switched over to the software side with DroneDeploy and was there for about 4.5 years. And then made some hops and skips after DroneDeploy, been mostly on the hardware side since. And I've been at DJI now for about 3.5 years, focused on construction, mining, surveying, and precision agriculture.
Okay. So it sounds like you have plenty enough to keep you busy.
Yeah, the fleet that I have here currently between the 350, 300, got the LiDAR payloads with the L1, L2, got all the digital twin stuff with the Mavic 3 Enterprise, the new Matrice 4 Enterprise, trying out some new payloads there. I've got quite the fleet here at home of drones.
Nice. So when you started flying the drone that you built, what was the sensor on it?
Sorry, what was that?
What was the sensor that you were using on the first drone that you built?
A GoPro. And I didn't even have enough money for a gimbal. So I was literally just taping the GoPro, and it was a Hero 2.
Right.
I think they're on
Oh,
Hero
geez.
13s or 14s at this
Yeah.
point. I didn't have enough money for a new Hero 4, I think was when I built my first one that they just released. This would have been Phantom 1 days, maybe
Jeez.
Phantom 2 Vision days at the very beginning. But yeah, was just using a wide fish angle GoPro and trying to stitch photos from it, which was absolutely terrible. But it got me in the door enough and got enough testing done that I was able to score my first drone job.
Okay. Cool. What was the first drone job?
Yeah, that was, I guess the first one full time was AgEagle, but my senior year of college, I went to a precision agricultural drone conference in Illinois in the
Okay.
United States. And in 2014, I had an internship doing precision agriculture. So it was all guidance for tractors and combines and precision agriculture for planting and harvesting. And I was really interested in drones since I had just built one, and they had this conference go on. So I met with a few different companies and was able to have an internship with a company called the AgRobotics, and they were the very first cloud processing engine out there, where they knew that farmers weren't going to be buying the expensive gaming computers, because
Yeah.
if you did make a Venn diagram of a farmer and a gamer, there's pretty much zero overlap between the two, unfortunately.
Yep.
And so, can we just send data to a AWS Amazon Cloud bucket to be able to process data and turn it around faster than what farmers had for processing computers? So it was definitely that route, and it was all agriculture. And the first like drone service provider jobs that I did on the
Mm.
side, it all ended up still being mapping, but it was all elevation mapping. So outside of
Okay.
the growing season, and in our area, we get so much rain that a lot of growers, they'll end up installing subsurface drainage. So it's like this plastic tile tubes that go throughout the field to help drain when you get those heavy rains. And I
Right.
would go and make these topographical maps so that they could start planning all of their drainage.
Okay.
And that was, yeah, 10 years ago at this point.
Oh. Okay. So how is it going from company working for a company that's software focused, like the AgEagle, what you'd have done on the software side, to DJI now, where I mean DJI now has software, but DJI was never known before as a drone software company. How has
Yeah,
that been?
it's definitely been different when it comes to hardware. You really need to know the true nuts and bolts of the hardware. And we also at
Yeah.
DJI have so many different product lines, and it is somewhat of a challenge to stay updated on all of the new lidar sensors, the optical zoom sensors, thermal, digital twin. But I will say, when I joined in early 2022 and up till now, drones aren't what they used to be, and things are just simpler. So it's pretty plug
Yeah.
and play at this point. And I think DJI leads the game of things just being pressing the easy button and things just
Yep.
working and making
Yep.
sense. And so while it was a big shift to go from how to position software to how to position hardware, the hardware is the best in the game. So
Yeah.
it's that part's been easy to transition.
Okay. And what about somebody like Skydio, who is US focused, and now you have a very broad international presence that you have working with DJI. How is that specific within hardware sort of part of the industry been?
Sure. I mean, it's the team that I've been working with were based out of the Los Angeles office, and most of my coworkers are based out of the Los Angeles office, even though I work remotely. But our main focus is still North America, the U.S. market. It
Okay.
is a fairly large market for DJI. There's a lot of adoption still happening in the U.S. market. That being said, though, it does put things into perspective when you have so many different teams that you're working with and collaborating with, whether it's the EU market, the Middle Eastern market, Africa, South America, LATAM. And it really puts things into perspective of what drone does the entire world need for this use case rather than what drone does the US need for this use case. There's quite a bit of overlap, but I would say it's refreshing with the goal of building the best drone hardware and now software, period, rather than just going after this is the scope and it has to be the United States. So I'm also supporting Canada, which and parts of Latin America as well. And our team is definitely branching out
Okay.
and supporting some of these other markets. So overall, I really appreciate it. And it's unlocked. I've had some really fun international trips. 2 years ago, when we launched the L2, I went down to Guatemala and we flew that LiDAR sensor to find ancient Maya ruins, which we were able to document a few sites that had previously not been documented. We presented that at 2023 Energeo over in Germany. So
Okay.
the what DJI has been able to provide as far as work and opportunities has been par none the greatest that I've had at in the drone industry.
And what exactly, so you're a solutions engineer at DJI, but what
Sure.
exactly is it, at a sales role, support role, technical role, like a combination of all of them? What is exactly that you do?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I've worked a couple different solutions engineering roles with a couple different drone companies so far. The main difference I would say at DJI is we're working really closely with a bunch of different teams. So since the drones typically are like they're really good, and I would trying to
Hmm.
not be biased, but they are kind of the best in the industry. So
Right.
if people are looking at purchasing drones, they typically are going the DJI route. So because it's not that much sales focused, it's really about how can I support the dealer network? How can I support end users? How can I unlock other use cases and learn from end users and dealers what their use cases are? And then also being able to work closely with the team actually developing the product. That's been some of the most excitement I've
Yeah.
had with this role is being able to relay what is going on within this market, what are all the different use cases, what do I see would be hardware that would be valuable to bring to the market, relay that back to the team. And since I've been here the past 3.5 years, I think we've released over 40 different pieces of hardware, all
Wow.
focused on the enterprise side.
Nice. And I know you work in specific industries, but is there a most unique use case or something that's made you just stop and be like, what? That you've seen somebody do with a drone, a DJI drone?
Yeah, I would say anything that has to do with the fly cart series. I know that it's kind of a niche, but
Right.
anything that's going to be heavy lifting, that's going to be pretty incredible. Whether it's search and rescue operations, we've got a main client based out of Utah that another guy named Kyle that has been utilizing the fly cart for search and rescue, being able to on the mountainside be able to drop off supplies for individuals so that they can get rescued. As well as I think you may have seen some marketing material that DJI has created over the past year or two when we released the fly cart, where we had this what I would call a giant boomstick, which was
Yeah.
a giant stick hanging underneath the Flycart 30, and then it would go and knock ice off of the
The
transmission
ice.
lines.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That
I would
was
say
really
anything
cool.
Flycart related has been just crazy to watch the development.
Before we continue, special announcement. We have just launched the Pilots of the Caribbean podcast drone pilot checklist. So whether you are a hobbyist or a commercial operator, this checklist will make sure that you have everything in order before you take off for your next flight. Now, to get the checklist, there's a link in the description, and you sign up and you will receive it in your email. Now, we are also announcing that we'll be launching the Pilots of the Caribbean podcast newsletter in a couple of weeks. So that's coming soon. And once you sign up to receive the checklist, you'll automatically be added to the newsletter listing. Or if you want to sign up for the newsletter, you can head over to the website, pilotsofthecaribbeanpod.com, and there's a form on the homepage where you could submit your name and your email address, and you add it to the newsletter list. And I guarantee you, you're not going to want to miss out on that because we have some really good stuff coming at you. So checklist, link in the description. If you just want to sign up for the newsletter, head over to the website and sign up now. Now back to it.
Cool. So hear this, right? So here in the Caribbean, we tend to, because of the cost of a lot of items, we tend to, keep them past what may be considered the traditional life cycles.
Sure.
Could you walk me through, like, what is the process of the life cycle of a DJI Enterprise product? Because, we have some people like, so where I work, we have a 300, and then you'll recently drop the 400.
Yeah.
And when the 350 came out, it was like, okay, so is the 350 still good? We've only had this for like 2 years. Was the process you'll go through to be like, okay, time to move on from this model, or just bring in a new one and then fade out the next one eventually?
Sure. There's a couple different aspects to look at it. One would be if you already have the piece of hardware, understanding how many flight hours that you would have on that piece of hardware. That's something that through different like third-party fleet managements, you're going to be able to do, or even just looking within the Pilot 2 app, you'd be able to determine how much flight hours are on there. I've seen DJI drones with hundreds, if not thousands of flight hours. But once you start pushing those thousands of flight hours on a drone, you definitely want to start looking at being able to refurbish or just make sure that the drone is safe to still operate. But it really just comes down to, is this drone still checking the box for the use case that I intended it? Are there any other use cases that I want to go after? And does this piece of hardware tackle those? And what would be the efficiencies of purchasing a new drone over what I currently have? So because of that, we may have released new drones since, like you give the example that you have a 300. We've released the 350. We released the 400 now. There's a lot of pilots still operating the Mavic 3 Enterprise, where we've released the Matrice 4 Enterprise. There's even pilots still using a Mavic 2 Pro because they have the API capabilities and being able to do mapping there. If it can still do the main use case that you have for it, and there may not be the full reason to upgrade. For example, if you're going out and making large topographical maps, a Mavic 3 Enterprise that was released in September of 22, so a little over, or right around 3 years ago, that is still going to be incredibly valuable, where many people may not want to upgrade to the Matrice 4 Enterprise. There may not be the value of selling that piece of hardware and then purchasing the Matrice 4 and having to spend a couple $1,000s doing that. But if you want to get into digital twin creation, where you're trying to automate capture of a three-dimensional asset like a building or something like that, there's a lot of features that we released with the Matrice 4 Enterprise that the Mavic 3 Enterprise just doesn't have. And so while we love to get new pieces of hardware, oftentimes our drones, they can last 3, 4, 5, 6 years or even more and still be able to operate. I've got a Phantom 3 Advanced sitting next to me. So if that drone can still fly, which I flew it earlier this summer, it still has a purpose. It's just really understanding what your use cases are and what the efficiencies would be on upgrading.
So that's from the user standpoint. How do you guys determine, is it that there's a fixed every 2 years we have to find a way to upgrade this, or is it that you only release when there is some substantial change in technology or some very big flaw that a software patch can't, just necessarily fix?
Yeah, that one would be probably above my pay grade a bit. But what I have seen historically while I've been here at DJI, even on the enterprise side, we generally are releasing new pieces of hardware almost as fast as Apple releases their new phones every year. So we had the Mavic 3 Enterprise come out in September of 22. We had the Matrice 4 Enterprise, which ended up being the uh, the successor to the Mavic 3 Enterprise. That was released in January of 2025. So it's pretty common with the enterprise side to see a new product about every 2 to 3 years.
Okay. One of the new products that you guys released recently is the, can't remember the exact name of it, but the edge computing device that you can now attach to the 400 series. And I believe I saw something recently on the Matrice 4 series. What, and I think that it may not be even able to see what what the full possibilities or something like that would be yet, but what do you think is like the, how would I want to say, uh best way to take advantage of something like that right now? Because somebody might look at it and say, all right, my drone right now, if I buy the newest one, I can map, I could create models, I could do automated missions.
Yeah.
Why would I need this?
Yeah. And the Manifold 3 is a really powerful resource if the job requires it. So if your main use case is mapping, you're probably not going to get a whole lot of value add to it. But on
Mm,
edge computing is going to bring value to, if you need the data really fast, that's going to bring value. So if you're
okay.
doing search and rescue and you need to be able to process the map while the drone is flying, we would be able to utilize that capability. So you could map a mountainside very quickly without the drone even landing, and you would start
Yeah.
being able to analyze that map on the controller and maybe spot something or someone that you might need. It also is
Mm,
going to help out with generating 3D models faster. So we talked earlier about creating digital twins of buildings. What you can use the Manifold 3 for with the Matrice 4 Enterprise is you can have the drone, you launch the drone and have the drone actually fly around the building or the asset that you're trying to fly. It's
right.
going to, since it has more onboard compute, it can pipe in the video feeds from the obstacle avoidance sensors and then build a low resolution 3D model on the fly. And it can take literally just a couple minutes to fly around the asset, build a low resolution 3D model. Then all you have to do is just tap around the asset, set your flight recommendations. So your what resolution you want to capture the data set at, your side lap and front
Mhm.
lap and things like that, and then hit go. And it's going to be able to generate a really fast 3D model for you. And then the final
Okay.
one would be if you are looking to do a lot of AI detection. AI detection generally uses quite a bit of onboard compute. And so if you're looking to run models that are outside of what we already have, which we already have trained on people, cars, and boats, and to be able to detect them. And then if you want to have the camera track it, you can. But we do have a lot of developers that are starting to develop these models that can be imported into the Manifold 3 for tracking for wildlife preservation. If you wanted to track deer,
Okay.
track rhinos or hippos, you can. And there's a lot more tracking, and you can track more things at once. We have a cap on side of the drone uh, that you're really only going to be able to count about 100 up to about 128 objects within the frame of view. But if you have a crowd, that can typically be hundreds of people, if not thousands of people. So adding more onboard compute, you can have a better understanding of live tracking with hundreds of items.
The model training that you mentioned, that's being done by DJI or that's third party?
Yeah, so we did the initial training when we released the Matrice 4 Enterprise for the people, the cars, the boats. We have unlocked the developer side so that developers can kind of run and take it from there. So the
Okay.
majority of the new models that you're seeing now are developed by third parties.
Okay. So in instance, let's say like we have Sargassum issues in the Caribbean, which is basically like a specific type of seaweed that washes up on shore and it smells really bad when it decays. Somebody could have a model they could come up with to, do whatever would benefit somebody in that industry using the M4 and the edge compute.
Yeah, you just need to have enough data to be able to train on it. And then once you build a model, you could literally get a live readout while you're flying the
Mhm.
drone around manually to have it highlight those certain areas for you.
So you give a lot of you are the person that speaks a lot of these webinars that talk about solutions and what people should use for different use cases. What's some of like the biggest misconceptions that you've seen people come up with, or things that may have been true years ago that aren't true anymore because advancements in technology that you still have to face in the drone world?
Yeah, it would be the, that is a really good question. I would say the ability of analyzing this data. So it has been historically over the past 3, 5, even longer, more years ago, that it has been become fairly easy to capture sites. It's also become a lot
Okay.
easier to capture sites in 3 dimensions. But just because you can capture something doesn't mean that you have the pipeline to be able to fully inspect those sites. And it oftentimes takes a person, a individual in the mix to be able to analyze it. And that analyzing can be oftentimes very manual and very cumbersome.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of tools that have been released over the past year or two. And I see this being the fastest growing market sector within drones, at least on the enterprise side, of being able to take a data set that you've captured, just raw photos, maybe it's a 2D map, maybe it's a 3D model, be able to run it through a pipeline of inspection and then output the the results that you really need without having human intervention. So
Right.
you could do vegetation encroachment when it comes to long linear surveys with LiDAR. If you're doing transmission lines and you don't have to analyze that really dense point cloud, you can just have it output. Look at these certain areas that you need to start doing some
Mhm.
tree trimming. It could be analyzing utilities, substations, power plants to be able to just say within this entire site, you have these 16 different assets that have a broken part on them. Go ahead and fix these broken parts or determine if the severity is bad
Mhm.
enough that you need to fix. Whereas 3 or 5 years ago, we've been able to capture these sites, but then what do you do with the data? And it can
Yeah.
oftentimes that can be very cumbersome. And I think that we're starting to really solve that problem.
And anything you would see from your vantage point that you would be excited about in the next 3 to 5?
That's going to be remote operations. That has
Okay.
expanded. It's not something that came new in 2025. We released the Doc 1, I believe that was 2023. Um, but
Oh, sure. Okay.
that with the improvements on being able to get waivers for beyond visual line of sight and be able to operate these drones completely remotely, I think that the frequency of capture is going up with these docks, and just the amount of spaces that you're going to be capturing your sites is going to go up. So definitely when it comes to asset inspection, and
Mhm.
because of that and that asset inspection improvements, I think dock operations and taking the person out of the loop of capture and just having one person at a command center that's mainly capturing all of that company's data, utilizing docks is going to be the biggest thing in the next 2 to 3 years.
Do you see the proposed 108 helping with that, how it is, as opposed to how it is now? Or, would it be more challenging given how they've had certain things proposed in it?
Yeah, I would say that Part 108 is going to make things more streamlined. So we've finally
Okay.
gotten to the point with the FAA that it is somewhat streamlined to be able to basically just pull pull someone's beyond visual line of sight waiver, insert in your
Mhm.
own company name, give it characteristics on where you're going to be flying, and then submit that back to the FAA. I think a lot of improvements with
Okay.
Part 108 will just be a much simpler way of saying, I've got a dock here. I'm going to be flying remotely, letting the FAA know. That's all based in the United States. But with Part
Yeah.
108, I think streamlined BV loss operations is going to be a lot easier.
Okay. So, Kyle, I can't have you here and not address the elephant in the room because, here in the Caribbean, I would say maybe 95% or more of our drones are DJI, enterprise, consumer, everything. We're recording this in October, and we're just about 2 months before a proposed deadline for a ban of DJI drones if a security audit isn't performed. For the audience that may not be up to date on it, could you give us a breakdown on what the situation is and what may be happening as much as you can say?
Yeah, that one is kind of a tough subject. And I would say, just based off of what my role is at DJI, being more on the solutions engineering side, I don't stay as up to date on that. I leave that up to more of the policy team. And so
Right.
the policy team has done quite a bit when it comes to a lot of these a lot of these companies that are relying on DJI drones to be able to help advocate to make sure that they don't completely lose operations. So I recommend the Drone Advocacy Alliance to be able to sign up there if this, whatever is going to happen, if that does potentially affect. Basically, if you're flying DJI drones, it's something that I would recommend doing. Um, and even with a lot of this stuff happening over the past year or two, if we look at even just the US market, the vast majority of drones are still DJI.
Yep.
And so I don't foresee DJI like going anywhere. I think we're still going to be by far like the hardware manufacturer. We keep leading the way. And but as far as what's going to happen in the next few months and what the team has been able to do, it's just not within the role that I have, and so I
Yeah.
would reach out to the policy team. But it is definitely a hot topic right now with the drone
Yeah, it
industry.
is. It most definitely is. So okay, you answered that. Um, so in terms of growth and what we're looking at from DJI on the enterprise side, your sectors, where do you think we could expect the most growth in terms of drone adoption and finding new use cases for the next couple of years?
Whew. I would say a lot of it can involve the um, getting back to the asset inspection. So, when you're talking specifically about the enterprise side, what assets are currently not being analyzed that a drone could help out with? You're talking about these really long linear roadways, railways, pipelines, transmission lines, being able to utilize docks and BV loss operations on those sites. So while it's somewhat of a cop out answer because energy and utilities is something that DJI has been focusing on for a long time, I still think
Yeah.
the largest amount of growth is there. I think we've really already figured out how we can utilize drones when it comes to construction, when it comes to mapping. DJI is going to continue to build better and better products to be more and more efficient within those industries. But at this point, if you haven't adopted a drone within those markets and it would bring value to you, I think you're kind of behind the eight ball. I think precision agriculture is also that way, that we've had drones now for 7, 8, 10 years. And so the largest amount of adoption ends up being on the utilities and energy perspective in that sector. I would say, though, that that's more of my opinion, not necessarily a DJI broad opinion, but
Yeah.
just someone that's been in the industry now for a little over a decade. I think that the energy side is something that is going to still have the largest growth year over year.
Okay. And so in the Caribbean, we have a what I would consider a young UAV industry. So we have a lot of new companies that are trying to provide services. And one of the conversations I've had recently is around, because our individual island markets are so small, you kind of have to be a jack of all trades instead of trying to focus on one industry if you want to be a
Yeah.
successful company. So I know this is probably a very difficult question to ask, but let's say we separate it into the smaller series, so the Mavic 3 Enterprise series, and then look at the Matrice, the bigger boy series. If you were to, sort of look at like as many industries that you could interact with from, a single investment, what would be your recommendations for the different categories? So small ones first and then big boys after.
Yeah, the small ones first. And it honestly I might have the same answer between both drones. I think construction is going to be the biggest bang for your buck and the fastest return on investment. Now,
Right.
that being said, as a drone service provider, I think the most important thing you can do is not necessarily be um, understand and be involved and engaged everything hardware wise. I think that's really important to know exactly what a drone can do. But the biggest aspect, in my opinion, is understand the industry that you're going into. If you're going into agriculture and you're trying to provide value add to a farmer, a grower, or a company, it's pretty obvious if you haven't done the industry knowledge and the industry research before going and meeting with a client.
Mm-hmm.
Same goes with
Right.
construction. If you don't understand the typical stages of a construction site from pre-bid to earthworks to pouring cement to as build up, you're gonna kind of fall short on what you can
Yeah.
bring to the table. But with going back to the original question, I would say construction, because if you look at these other industries like utilities, energy, and emerging and things like that, all of those sites still require construction to be built for those utilities to go up. And
Mm-hmm.
so, if you can provide accurate survey and map data, accurate 3D data, and to capture that data over time, I think that's going to be the biggest value add for construction. And it's honestly sometimes the easiest use cases to also go after. If it is stockpiles for mines or for quarries. Measuring a stockpile is something that we've been able to do for a drone for over a decade now, and it's
Yeah.
become very streamlined. And so I would say if you're going into the Mavic 3 Enterprise series, diving into construction and diving into surveying, which has a lot of overlap, I think is going to bring
Yeah.
the biggest value. When you get into the big
Okay.
boy drones, the Matrice 400, the Matrice 300, and 350 series, you can just level up what options you can bring to the construction and to the survey market. If you're in an area like you're down in the Caribbean and you have a lot of vegetation, but oftentimes these sites, especially for pre-bid, they want to know what the topographical site looks like. So how does LiDAR be able to benefit over traditional photos and what photogrammetry can do? But it's still going to be within that construction and still within that survey market. Maybe I'm biased because that's my background and that's my knowledge. But I think if you are starting a drone service provider industry, or if you're branching out from real estate, which is a really easy way to get into drone service provider, I think the next step to really take is to start flying over quarries, being able to fly over mines, being able to fly over construction sites with approval, and be able to start
Yeah.
making high resolution 2D maps.
Okay. Well, that's a good answer. Hopefully anybody is listening who was, trying to find their way into the drone industry and find a vertical that, and a drone that they could use would get some good, insight from that. Kyle, I know we have a limit, so I don't want to get, too close to it before we start, but I have a question that I usually ask most guests on the podcast just to get an idea of,
Sure.
their perspective on terms of how their journey has been. So as was one thing you wish you knew about the drone industry before you chose it as a career?
Oh man, that is a really good question. Um, hmm. I it would probably go back to what I kind of just said, that it isn't as much about knowing all of the ins and outs of the drone, knowing what it's going to sound maybe naive, but knowing about motors, knowing about ESCs, knowing about autopilots, like diving really deep there can be its own industry vertical where you might be manufacturing or building drones or being able to support there. But on the enterprise side, when it comes to what jobs and opportunities are out there, I think the biggest thing to that I wish I would have learned early on was understand the industry verticals that are out there. So understand, like dive deep into mining and what the main pain points are there. Dive deep into construction and what the main pain points are, or utilities, or telecom, compared to what can I do with a drone, and then take that and try to pigeonhole it into a use case
Yeah.
where find the pain points of what that industry is and then figure out how a drone can fix those pain points rather than just taking what a drone can do and pigeonholing it into that industry.
Nice. Thank you very much for that. Kyle, what's next for you guys? What's next for DJI? What's next for I don't know what you could say about what's next for DJI, but I'll keep it between us on the recording.
Yeah, I'll say what I can say, and I'll try to still maintain the job that I have and not get in too much trouble. But uh, yeah, the what is coming up would be we're always releasing new pieces of hardware, whether it comes
Facts.
to payloads, whether it comes to drones. Definitely be on the lookout. We're not done in 2025 when it comes to releasing new pieces of hardware that might be able to benefit you. I cannot say what those pieces of hardware are, any specifications there,
Understood.
but we've always got stuff cooking. And even though we've got less than 3 months left, we're still going to have a pretty hot end to 2025. And I think a lot of the next value add does come back to what we talked about first, which is software. DJI has historically been this hardware provider, and then we've leaned in on being able to have API, SDK support so that third party companies can build the software for our drones. But we as DJI have put in a lot of engineering resources when it comes to data capture. So you've seen a whole lot of new mission planning tools that we've created, and then
Hmm.
data analysis. So Flight Hub 2, our cloud-based product that is going to be able to help out with fleet management, dock operations, cloud hosting of data, cloud processing of data, analytics, and different tools to measure and annotate your data. A lot of that is changing very quickly. We can release new
Okay.
features literally weekly. And so I think while we're going to continue to release new hardware, the fastest growing sector within DJI enterprise when it comes to releases is going to be focused on software.
Got it. Looking forward to that because, like you said, DJI was never really considered a software company. And now we're seeing, I think just today I saw the release of the on premises
Yep.
for Flight Hub 2.
Yeah,
So
that's
that is
a new
interesting.
product that we're really excited about. So I talked about all of these cloud opportunities with Flight Hub 2, and we've got a lot of certification behind the scenes to make sure you can
Hmm.
operate that in a very safe cloud environment. But if the organization or if the use case requires it to be completely on premises, where you don't want that data touching any sort of internet, maybe only
Right.
intranet or completely offline, you're going to be able to utilize that too. So we've definitely been listening and learning from the end users and clients on what they want, and that was another product that was a need that we bring out for broader scale adoption.
Nice. Well, it really does show when DJI listens to the end users, and you see that in a lot of the new product releases and a lot of the features that you guys put out with the new releases. So that's cool. Kyle, before I let you get out of here,
Yeah,
I don't know if we want to put contact information out there because you work for DJI, you don't want a bunch of people just messaging you and email you. But
yeah, that's
in
fine.
case you can, where can people get in contact with you? Find out more about the stuff that you're doing. Anything you'll be at this year again for the rest of the year?
Yeah, so the trips that I have for the rest of the year would be going to DroneDeploy Horizons. DroneDeploy is a software company that DJI is partnered up with. So being able to showcase the dock operations and the new hardware Matrice 4 Enterprise at DroneDeploy Horizons. I don't know if we have any other trips after that. We also have Geo Week.
Okay.
That's going to be in February of 2026. When it comes to finding out more about DJI, I think following DJI on LinkedIn, on YouTube are going to be the two main platforms I would recommend. And not just the DJI channel, but also follow the DJI Enterprise channel. We release a lot of specific products and stuff, information about Enterprise. As far as touching base with me and getting connected with me, rather than shooting out an email or a phone number, I think the easiest way would be to connect on LinkedIn. The downside is that there are 3 different Kyle Millers within the drone industry itself. Kyle Miller is a very common name, but if you do look up Kyle Miller DJI, it generally pops up on LinkedIn. Happy to accept a connection request. And if you hit me up on a specific use case or a pain point that you may have, I'll definitely message you back.
Cool. Thank you very much for that. Kyle, it was a pleasure having you on this episode. Right, we got it in on the time. Good to go.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Alan. And I would love to be back at some point and glad to join from DJI side.
Not a problem. Don't be a stranger. I will want to have you back on soon. Actually, we have some stuff to talk about.
Cool. Let's plan on it.
All right. Kyle, thank you very much, man. Take care.
You too. See ya.